Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadhyasya yato nivayad itaratas charte survihyasvarat.
Janmadhyasya yatam vayalitaratas charte survihyasvarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Dine Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha.
Tejo Varimridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
The primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of water in the fire, land in the water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universe.
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
Temporarily manifested by the action of three modes of
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
Meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in a transcendental abode,
which is then existent as transcendental,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the
which is
material world.
forever free from illusory representation.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him for his power.
Dharma pujita kaichovocha,
Dharma prujita kaitavutta
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
paramo nivasana
vedyam vastavam atra vastu,
vedyam vastavam
shivadam tapatrayon mulanam. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Srimad Bhagavatam Mahamuni
Kim va purir Ishwaraha, Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra, Krite Bihi Sususabis Takshanad. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are material motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest
which
truth,
is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold misery.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva is mature.
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
Sufficient itself without realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively, submissively hears the message
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture,
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam,
Sukhamukad amrita drava samyutam.
pibata Bhagavatam rasamalayam,
Vivata Bhagavatam Rasamaya.
muhur ahoraska bhuvibhavakaha.
Mura Horasika Bhagavata.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert thoughtful men, relish Mangala.
The mature fruit of the desired Vedic literatures.
Mature for the desired field of Vedic
It
literature.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shukadeva.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this food has become even more.
Although its nectarine juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarine juice wasn't relishable for all,
including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Samvatam Swagata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana
Hiryantaksto hi badrani vidunoti suhit satam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad-Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nastapresu bhadirisu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistake. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam, and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobadayas chaye chita etairanavidam stitvam sattve prasidati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis, chidyante sarvasamsaya, shiyante jasya karmani, drista evat manishware. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text number 17. Abhyasin manasa sudham Trivrit brahmaksharam param Mano yachej Jita swaso Brahma bijam avishmaran. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. After sitting in the above manner, make the mind remember the three transcendental letters Aum, and by regulating the breathing process, control the mind so as not to forget the transcendental seed. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Omkara, or the pranava, is the seed of transcendental realization, and it is composed of the three transcendental letters Aum, or Om. By its chanting by the mind in conjunction with the breathing process, which is a transcendental but mechanical way of getting into trance, as devised by the experience of great mystics, one is able to bring the mind, which is materially absorbed, under control. This is the way of changing the habit of the mind. The mind is not to be killed. Mind or desire cannot be stopped, but to develop a desire to function for spiritual realization, the quality of engagement by the mind has to be changed. The mind is the pivot of the active sense organs, and as such, if the quality of thinking, feeling, and willing is changed, naturally the quality of actions by the instrumental senses will also change. Omkara is the seed of all transcendental sound, and it is only the transcendental sound which can bring about the desired change of the mind and the senses. Even a mentally deranged man can be cured by treatment of transcendental sounds. In the Bhagavad-Gita, the pranava Omkara has been accepted as the direct, literal representation of the supreme absolute truth. One who is not able to chant directly the holy name of the Lord as recommended above can easily chant the pranava Omkara. This Omkara is a note of address, such as, O my Lord, just as Om Hari Om means, O my Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As we have explained before, the Lord's holy name is identical with the Lord himself. So also is Omkara. But persons who are unable to realize the transcendental personal form or name of the Lord on account of their imperfect senses, in other words, the neophytes, are trained to the practice of self-realization by this mechanical process of regulating the breathing function and simultaneously repeating the pranava Omkara within the mind. As we have several times expressed, since the transcendental name, form, and attributes, pastimes, etc. of the personality of Godhead are impossible to understand with the present material senses, it is necessary that through the mind, the center of sensual activities, such transcendental realizations be set into motion. The devotees directly fix their minds on the person of the Absolute Truth, but one who is unable to accommodate such personal features of the Absolute is disciplined in impersonality to train the mind to make further progress. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. After sitting in the above manner, make the mind remember the three transcendental letters Aum, and by regulating the breathing process, control the mind so as not to forget the transcendental seed. So one time in London, Prabhupada met I think it was the ambassador of India for England. And they had a discussion. In fact, I think there's a video, or there's definitely a photo of it, and there's the transcript of their discussion. And at one point, the ambassador keeps talking about the importance of saying Om. And Prabhupada, I guess, became a little bit dissatisfied with his insistence on saying and he said that people who don't have any appreciation for Krishna prefer to say Om. And the guy got shocked. He said, no, I mean, Om, Hari Om, Om Krishna, Om, Krishna, there's nothing wrong with saying Om. And Prabhupada said, no, there's nothing wrong with it, but because you don't like the personality of Godhead, you say Om, not Krishna. So he got the ambassador really flustered when he said that, but Prabhupada was right. And here, again, he's saying very correctly, he says that persons who are unable to realize the transcendental personal form or name of the Lord on account of their imperfect senses, in other words, the neophytes, are trained to the practice of self-realization by this mechanical process of regulating the breathing function and simultaneously repeating the pranava Omkara within the mind. As we have several times expressed, since the transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, etc. of the personality of Godhead are impossible to understand with the present material senses, it is necessary that through the mind, the center of sensual activities, such transcendental realization be set into motion. In other words, the incipient stage, the beginning stage. So you can take this mechanical process of regulating the breathing and repeating the pranava omkara. And the devotees directly fix their minds on the person of the Absolute Truth. So the people who don't want to fix their mind on the person of the Absolute Truth, they have a certain, let's say, reluctance to accept that God is a person because their mind has been contaminated by Mayavad philosophy. And this is just a reflection of the original reason why people left Krishna and came to the material world, to become a little Krishna. It's because they became envious of the Lord. And one aspect of that enviousness is the reluctance to say the name of the Lord or accept that the Lord is an eternal person and the source of everything, including all the first chapter of Yuha, and the Narayana, and the second chapter of Yuha, and all the different incarnations, and the material world, etc. They don't want to accept this. Therefore, they prefer to say Om, which refers to the impersonal, in their mind, it refers to impersonal Brahma-Jyoti. However, the real meaning of Om is given by Srila Prabhupada, and in which, first of all, there's a whole discussion about Om Tat Sat and Pranava Omkara in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. But in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and also teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 20, the last paragraph of that chapter, there's a clear delineation of what is Om. It has these three letters, A-U-M. A refers to Krishna, the Supreme Truth. U refers to Radharani, which is pure service. And M refers to the living entity who engages in the eternal service of the Supreme Lord. That's the real meaning of Om. And in the renunciation through wisdom, page 18, Prabhupada says, Lord Vishnu is the supreme shelter of everything. All demigods are constantly meditating on him. Demigods consider Lord Vishnu's lotus feet their supreme destination, and they become liberated by performing all activities for his pleasure. One who wants release from the vicious karmic cycle must have Lord Vishnu's lotus feet as his final objective. Otherwise, he will have to become demoniac. So, therefore, in the Rig Veda it says, Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam Sadapasyanti Surayo Divivaja Atatam Tat Pripasno Vipanyavo. In other words, that the ultimate destination of all the demigods are the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. That's the supreme destination. In other words, this is Rig Veda 1:22-20. The lotus feet of Vishnu are the supreme devotional platform. And the performance of everything on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead assures the perfection of all activity. And so this is chapter 17, Bhagavad-Gita, text 24. So then there's an explanation of Om Tat Sat. So Om refers, shows what is the goal of or what should be the goal of everyone. Just like it says, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitam Paramam Bhavam, Purusham Sastvatam Divyam, Adidevam Ajam Vibhu. In other words, 10th chapter, verse number 12. Param Brahma means Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Param Dhamma means Krishna is the supreme destination for all living entities, going back to Godhead, or going back to Krishna. So, therefore, this Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam means that the goal of all the demigods is to surrender at the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu and serve the Lord. So that's the meaning of Om, and it's all about Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the supreme destination for all living entities. And then Tat means that one should become free of all material desires. That doesn't mean one should become free of desires. One should become free of all material desires. And just like in the second chapter, verse 71, Viha kamam yasarvam pumam charati nispraha nirmama nirahankara sasantim adigachyati. This is a very important verse. We've gone over it before. I'll repeat it again. So it says Vihaya kamam yasarvam. That means that a person has to give up all desires for sense gratification. Vihaya kamam yasarvam pumam charati nispraha. And one should be free from all such desires. And therefore, nirmama, and one should be free of the sense of proprietorship. Nirahankara, and one should be devoid of false ego. Sasantimadikachati. Only then can one attain real peace. So this is a very nice verse. It's all about desirelessness. And to become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desiring to become Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. The desire to become Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense satisfaction. So he did not want to fight because he was attached to his own sense gratification. That is, to be able to, if he was going to fight in a battle, most of all the other battles he ever fought, after victory, he showed it off to his family members and his relatives, and they were proud of him, of his prowess. But here, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, killing his own family members, he wouldn't have anyone to show it off to, or to get satisfaction from sharing his victory. It would be a lose-lose situation. It's not a win-lose situation. Either his family, immediate family, would die, or his extended family would die, or both. So, therefore, he didn't want to fight. So that was a selfish desire. Although he tried to hide it by speaking about morality and ethics and not being violent and blah blah blah. Just like the great champion of nonviolence, Gandhi, he caused tremendous violence by his inactions. There were even while India was still one country, including what later on became Pakistan, there were riots where Muslims were killing Hindus in Bengal. And he went there to pray and to fast. And because of his stature, because there was some respect for him, the massacre stopped. Of course, a lot of people were dead, but the massacre stopped. But then they started in Punjab and Delhi, and he went there, and they didn't stop. And eventually he was assassinated. So much for nonviolence. If you're going to be a politician, you can't be a coward. You have to be willing at certain points to fight, to be violent. because politics never succeed without violence. That's a thing that you have to understand. Just like during the election cycle here in the United States, there were riots going on in major cities. Not everywhere, but in the major cities. That's violence, right? Some people got killed. A lot of buildings were burned down. And some of them are still rioting, even in Portland, and there were riots in Seattle. So, politics do not succeed without violence. But there shouldn't be unnecessary violence. Usually, like the Bolshevik takeover of Russia, it was very violent, right? And then Pol Pot in Cambodia is extremely violent. And then Mao Zedong defeat of Chiang Kai-shek was extremely violent in China. So Gandhi, when he presented himself as a sadhu politician, was a total failure because his nonviolence caused the death of almost 1 million Hindus. And there was death of Muslims also, not as many as the Hindus. Okay, so then Tat, Om, we understand, means surrendering completely to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Then Tat means Radharani, and that is, one should not have any material desire, but can be full of all kinds of desires to please Krishna. And in the Bhagavad-Gita 17:25 says, without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. So if we act only for the pleasure of Krishna under the orders of the spiritual master, we become free of material entanglement. But if we act for selfish reasons, we become more and more entangled. And that's the condition of Radharani. She has only desires to please Krishna. She has no material desires. And then Om Tat Sat. Sat means the living entity. And in the 17th chapter, 26th, 27th verse explains, the absolute truth is the objective of devotional service. That means Om. And it is indicated in the word Sat. That is, the purpose of the living entity is to engage in the eternal service of the absolute truth, or Krishna. The performer of such sacrifice is called Sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance, and charity. Okay, then, which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Person, O Son of Prita. So let's clear up the difference between tapasya and the word tapasya and yajna. Okay, so yajna is a sacrifice, and tapasya is often translated in certain circumstances as penance or austerity. So the difference between penance and austerity, and this is a question of the English language now. Penance means you commit a sin and you receive something to do to nullify the reaction of the sin. That's a penance, right? Penance is voluntary self-punishment of repentance for having done wrong. Okay? Now, austerity means, again, you voluntarily deny yourself things, not because you did anything wrong, but because you want to gain control of your mind and the senses. And this is on the level of thinking, feeling, and willing. One wants to purify the thinking, the feeling, and the willing to only thinking, feeling, willing to please Krishna, whereas the materialist only thinks, feels, and wills to satisfy his own sense gratification. So the yogi tries to do this mechanically by controlling the breathing and having certain postures and meditating silently on Om or Om Tat Sat. And the devotee does it by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra and engaging wholeheartedly in devotional service and offering the result, all the result, to Krishna. So we see that this is the real meaning of Om Tat Sat. And therefore in the purport to 25 and 26 and 27 says, the words prasaste karmani, or prescribed duties, indicate that there are many activities prescribed in Vedic literature which are purificatory processes, beginning from the time of conception up to the end of one's life. So he's talking about the samskaras. Such purificatory processes are adopted for the ultimate liberation of the living entity. In all such activities, it is recommended that one vibrate Om Tat Sat. The words Sadbhave and Sadhubhave indicate the transcendental situation. Acting in Krishna consciousness is called Sattva, and one who is fully conscious of the activities of Krishna consciousness is called Sadhu. In the Srimad Bhagvatam 3.25.25, it is said that the transcendental subject matter becomes clear in the association of the devotees. In other words, the purpose of life becomes clear when you associate with genuine devotees. The words used are satam prasangat. Without good association, one cannot achieve transcendental knowledge. Very important point. Without good association, one cannot achieve transcendental knowledge. When initiating a person or offering the sacred thread, one vibrates the words Om Tat Sat. Similarly, in all kinds of performance of yajna, the object is the Supreme, Om Tat Sat. The word Tad Artiyam further means offering service to anything that represents the Supreme, including such service as cooking and helping in the Lord's temple, or any other kind of work for broadcasting the glories of the Lord. These supreme words, Om Tat Sat, are thus used in many ways to perfect all activities and make everything complete. So rather than being impersonal, it's actually Om Tat Sat is personal if you hear the explanation of the Vaishnavas. And if you hear the explanation of the Mayavadis, who have a disdain for the personality of Krishna and who want to have a, what you call, radical solution to suffering. Just like a man went to a dentist and he said, "Oh, doc, my tooth hurts so bad. Do something so I'd never have another toothache the rest of my life." He said, "Oh, you don't want to ever have a toothache again?" He said, "No, do something that I'll never have another toothache." So the doctor went and got his electric saw and sawed off his neck. That way he'll never have another toothache. But that's not, well, for most people, that's not an acceptable, solution, right? But that's what Mayavad philosophy is. They want to annihilate their individuality and merge into some indefinite thing that they believe is called the Brahman. Little do they know that the Brahman is made of infinite number of jivas, who are sparks, or you call it spirit sparks. Anyway, the real understanding of Om is the explanation given by Prabhupada and the Vaishnavas and Lord Chaitanya. However, one time in France, I discovered that a Grand Master of the Rosicrucian organization lived near our temple, which was in a suburb of Paris at that time. And I met this one person who was a Rosicrucian, and he came to our temple once or twice, and that's how I met him. And in discussions with him, when he told me that this Grand Master lived not far away from the temple, I said, well, do you ever go and see him? He said, yeah, I do. I said, can you take me? I'd like to meet him. He said, sure, I'll ask him first, and if he was willing to see you, you can come. So he asked, and the master said yes. Now, the Rosicrucians are an international organization. You can look them up on the internet. And they believe in a mixture of some Vedic things and some biblical things. It's a big hodgepodge. So when I went there, first of all, the house itself looked very, let's say, mysterious. It was it's in the neighborhood where our temple was, but it was an old house built in the style of the 19th century, and it had a black metal gate and fence around it, and there were a lot of trees, and it looked old. It looked something that was haunted. Let's put it like that. Even though we went during the day, but it looked really strange. So he had to ring a bell, and then the Grand Master came out of the house, but from the back door, and he came around and opened the gate, and the gate made some noise like that, like it doesn't open very much, and he let us in, and he looked strange too. He looked, he was older, and he had disheveled hair, and he had these fast-moving eyes, and anyway, it was strange. So we go inside, and we get inside, and everything's old, right, and antique, and you could tell that it's been there for maybe hundreds of years. And then we sit down, and then his disciple starts talking to him in a very animated way, and starts discussing Om, because they chant Om. And then he asks him if he can get a personal training in chanting Om. So, and it's all going on in French, and they speak really fast. But anyway, so they decide to go upstairs, and they leave me alone downstairs, and then they start practicing Om. He says, Om, Om, different ways of saying Om, right? I thought it was really strange, but they're saying something that's Vedic, right? So this Rosicrucian is a mixture of, some Vedas, some Bible, some this, some that, all hodgepodge stuff. But while I was sitting downstairs, the master had this, some kind of an instrument on the wall, this sort of like a kaleidoscope, and it's like circles turning, and when you look at it, you sort of get a little bit hypnotized, and the circles keep going, seem like they're going inside, right? And infinitely. So, and they asked me to look at that while they were upstairs. So I looked at it a little bit, and then I realized it was like, taking my mind away. So I stopped looking at it, right? So, this is what they do. They have all these crazy things that sort of play games with the mind, right? So afterwards, the master came down, and I had seen books that this guy had written. They're in all the libraries and the bookstores in Paris. And now I was meeting him, but I was not impressed at all by this guy. I mean, he was a trickster. He had these little gimmicks, and it was not at all inspiring spiritually. But this other person, this disciple, he was super inspired, right? But it just shows you how deviant things become when they borrow things from the Vedas without having a bona fide guru, and then they speculate and make a hodgepodge mishmash of different traditions and come up with a so-called new spiritual movement, Well, the Rosicrucians have been around a long time, maybe 400 or 500 years. But the whole thing is just a mixture of different traditions that they put together in a certain way. Okay, so unless we hear about the Vedic knowledge from bona fide authorities, this is what's going to happen. And unless we have good association, Prabhupada says, without good association, one cannot achieve transcendental knowledge. And this regular hearing and chanting, and especially meditating on this verse, which is homework for tomorrow. You read this verse, 3rd chapter. 1 second, let me just get that. 3rd chapter, 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 25th verse. 3:25-25. And this says, Satam prasangat mama virya samido bhavanti hit karna rasayana kata taj joshanad asva pavarga vartmani shadaratir bhakti anukramishyati. It's a very important verse. And it says, this is 3:25-25, in the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation. And thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begins. So this is your homework for tomorrow. Read this verse, and it's a long purport, not too long, maybe a page and a half, but it explains the process of advancing in Krishna consciousness and devotional service. That's why this is such an important verse. Okay, we'll stop right there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Was there homework from yesterday? No.
Not yesterday, but
Day before. Yeah. Did you do it? Yeah, you did it, right? Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, come read what you did.
The homework was study Bhagavad-Gita 9:27 and 9:28, and second homework was learn what is discretion is better part of valor means, and third homework was study Bhagavad-Gita 250. So the meaning of discretion is better part of valor means
Discretion, not discretion.
Okay.
Discretion.
Discretion is better part of valor means caution is better than bravery. One must use
Means
bravery.
what?
Caution,
Caution is better than
bravery.
bravery. Okay.
One must use bravery when it is absolutely needed. So bravery doesn't
Absolutely what?
needed.
Needed. Okay.
Yeah. So one must use bravery when it is absolutely needed. So bravery doesn't mean rushing to fight at the first given opportunity. One should discriminate first. And Bhagavad Gita 250 explains in brief, the art of work is how to get free from karmic reactions, good or bad, but freedom from bondage, karma, is simply a byproduct of devotional service. And study of Bhagavad Gita 9:27 explains, Srila Prabhupada explains, that everyone has to eat, but we should offer to Krishna first. Everyone needs to work, offer that work to Krishna, and similarly, everyone has tendency to give some charity. We should give it to Krishna in a Krishna conscious services. Everyone, and the fourth one is everyone needs to do austerity of mind, which is meditation, chanting Hare Krishna. And study of Bhagavad-Gita 9:28 verse explains the essence is the principle of renunciation is explained in this verse. Real renunciation is not giving up work. Rather, we should work for Krishna. That is real renunciation. Such work is free from auspicious or inauspicious results, and one becomes liberated and comes to Krishna, or returns to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada quotes Srila Rupa Goswami's definition of Yukta Vairagya, which literally means renunciation through application in the service of Krishna.
Very good. Thank you. Haribol. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.